I'd like to look at the analysis of an import quota using linear equation versions of demand and supply. So I'm going to start with a random set of supply and demand curves written here. And let's suppose that the world price is originally $50. That is the price in the international market. And under free trade, there would be an associated level of imports. Now, it turns out if you plug those numbers in, you're going to get a quantity demanded of 40, quantity supplied domestically is 10, which implies the free trade imports of 30. So let's imagine the government saying 30 is too much for whatever reason, and we're going to limit how much can be brought in to only 20 units of imports. Now, this is going to have an impact on the domestic price, domestic supply, domestic quantity, and also the quota rents that would be associated with this quantitative restriction on imports. So here we've got a couple of questions that we'd like to answer. First, what is the new domestic price when imports are limited to the 20 units? And secondly, calculate the quota rents associated with this quantitative restriction. Now, there are a lot of other questions that you could ask in terms of producer surplus and consumer surplus and so forth, but let's just focus on these two questions. What's the price with this level of imports, and what are the value of the quota rents? So let's look at a step-by-step process of how one would go about doing this. So we have a set of equations, as we've noted before, which characterize supply and demand. And let us use the fact that the prices facing domestic suppliers and consumers will be the same after the imports are allowed in under the quota. So what we have is the price faced by consumers is going to be equal to the price faced by producers. Okay, just set these two equations equal to each other. The other thing that we know is that the domestic demand minus the domestic supply has got to be equal to 20 units because we have the quota. Now, you can also rewrite that is whatever the quantity demanded is, it's going to be whatever you allow in by imports plus the quantity that is supplied by domestic producers. So what I want to do is to plug this relationship into this relationship. What do we get? Well, we're going to get 130 minus 2 times quantity demanded. Now we've got a version of quantity demanded over here. So 20 plus QS. Okay, again, that's just putting in what the quantity demand is equal to 10 plus 4QS. Now, in this equation, call it C, we have an equation with only one unknown, QS. Well, we can solve for that. Now, I'm not going to go through the details of this for you, but make sure that you can find that the value of the supply that will create the left-hand and right-hand side of equation C to be equal to each other will be this QS equal to 13.3. Okay, so now we know what the domestic supply is. We know what imports are. it's going to be 13.33 plus 20, 30, oops, what have I done here? Oh, no, that's right. Okay, so now we have the imports. I'm sorry, the quantity demanded. Imports are going to be 20. So we've got supply, we've got demand. Again, quantity supplied, 13.33. Quantity demanded equal to 33.33. Now the next step, we want to find out what the price is in this market with this level of demand and supply. Okay, so recall we've got demand P equal to 130 minus 2 times the quantity demanded, which is approximately 63.3. Again, that demand curve goes back to this right here. Now, just to be sure that everything's working out okay, let's make sure that the implied price on the supply side is also 63.3. So we got price equal to 10 plus 4 times QS. QS is 13.3, and it is also 63.3. So recall that the free trade price was, by assumption, 50. That's where we started. So what you have is that when you limit the amount of imports, the domestic price will rise. Now, what is the quota rent? If you recall, the quota rent is the difference between what someone can get in one place compared to the next best alternative somewhere else. So foreigners could get on the international market $50 times the 20 units, or 1,000. So if they take these products, these 20 units that they are selling into this foreign market, and sell it internationally, they can get $1,000. Now domestically, the prices has risen. So let's look at the foreigners' revenue in the domestic market. For selling these same 20 units, well, the price is 63.3. Okay, recall. I guess it's here. If they sold the same amount internationally, they can earn $1,266.66. So the rents, total rents, $266.6. If they can get into this protected market without paying any kind of fee for a license, they have rents associated with this. Now, what would this look like if we were drawing this on a graph? Just to sort of relate it to what we've done before. I have the world price of 50. And if you go back and you look at the associated imports under free trade, it was 30. Now what we've got is the price under the quota is 63.3. The quantity supplied, 13.3. 33.3 is the domestic demand. And this area C, which we've identified before in graphical versions, is going to be the difference in the price multiplied times the imports. And you would find that that's indeed the 266.6. Now you could also find the consumer and producer surplus, so on and so forth, but let's focus really just on the quota rents and the price effects. So for a foreigner, they may have ambiguous feelings about the ability to operate under free trade or potentially under a protected market by the importing country government. Because if they restrict the amount of imports that can come in from 30 to 20, the price goes up. If foreigners can get in without having to pay a license, they may indeed think the quota is just fine. So that's a version of the import quotas. And just recall that there are a number of steps here, and you'll see this on a problem set, where we're going to first set the demand and supply curve equal. We use the fact that we've got a quantitative restriction. We then essentially put the step 1 and step 2 together, and we can generate out of that the quantity demanded and quantity supplied domestically. And then we have an implied price that comes about from that, and also we can then calculate the quota rent.